Man of Tomorrow is a really good take on the Superman origin story. This is a Superman origin movie, and it starts from when he's young until he grows up, and he's in Metropolis, and he's trying to figure out what he's gonna do with himself, with the rest of his life with all these powers. But don't worry, it's not Smallville or anything like that. The vast majority of the movie is him already as an adult, working at the Daily Planet and in Metropolis. But yeah, we do see his childhood and how he adapts and reacts to getting his powers for the first time and things like that, and how his parents teach him to deal with it. Speaking about his parents in this version of the movie, I was actually very worried that they would be extremely negative towards him dealing with his powers, like trying to hide him from the world and letting people die instead, like in Man of Steel, the Jonathan Kent Man of Steel, which a lot of people, including myself, really didn't like. But here, it's more of a balanced approach.
I don't want him to feel different.
He is different. He lifted a tractor with one finger, Martha.
His parents do at first offer him similar advice. There's no mention of letting people die for the sake of keeping your powers a secret. But yes, they do prioritize keeping him safe by keeping his powers a secret from the world at large. But here it's told in a more balanced way because Clark Kent slash Superman thinks for himself.
All right.
So at one point, when he's growing more mature, he's saying that he should do more good with these powers because he can. And, even though his parents are very protective of him, they're still the good natured Kent family that we all know and love. So they do instill all this goodness in him, and he takes this very seriously as he grows up, and he makes his own decisions about becoming a superhero. He's not influenced by anyone directly here. His parents don't tell him to become Superman. His parents from Krypton don't tell him to become Superman. He decides for his own. And I think that's a very good take on the origin story. Whereas, like, the Christopher Reeve version, which is pretty much my favorite version of the character, was pretty much reared by his father, Jor-El, to become Superman. And again, like in the Henry Cavill Man of Steel version, which I like much less, he hid his powers from the world because of the teachings of his Earth father, Jonathan Kent. In this one, he just takes it all in and decides for himself that he wants to do good as Superman or as a superhero. And I believe this is not the first time that this sort of take on his origin has happened. Pretty sure that this take has already been tackled in the comics, but it's nice to see it here in animated form. One thing that I also love is it shows Clark Kent as an intern in the Daily Planet, which is great because you don't see that very often. You rarely see that actually. Always you see him just as a full-fledged reporter already, and you're wondering why. Like in the Christopher Reeve Superman movie, he stays in the Fortress of Solitude training with Jor-El for 12 years, and then he's hired as a full-fledged reporter in the Daily Planet with what credentials? It's even worse in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, where he's like a wandering bum for years, right? He's like a waiter or whatever. And then at the end of the movie, he's like a full-fledged reporter with the bum background. Like, what? So here, it's great because it shows him going up the ranks, like logically, like a normal modern person. There's no tricks. Like, he did go to school in Smallville. It's stated outright, and then he's trying to get a full-time job here, but is starting out as an intern. And I love that because one of the things that they're trying to do with this version of Superman is make him very relatable to the audience, and I believe they really did succeed with this version. Also very interesting in this version is that typically Superman is the granddaddy of all superheroes. Like, he was the first one. Superman is typically still depicted as the first superhero of his generation. Here, it's not the case. Because in the story, it is revealed that Batman and the Martian Manhunter have already been operating on Earth years before Clark Kent decided to become Superman. And that's very interesting to start off a Superman origin story with a lot of other superpowered people already. And I really like this because it's a different take on it. That's why a lot of people think that Superman is boring. And he's not boring. There are some amazing stories attached to the character. It's just that when people adapt the character for popular media, for some reason they just fall on the same thing. It's the same origin story. He's always just fighting Lex Luthor and so on. So they essentially remake the same story over and over and over. But this one, they're trying really hard to not do that. It's still an origin story. It's still straight up an origin, still straight up a familiar Superman origin story, but they try their best to make it unique and stand on its own. So yes, he meets Lex Luthor, Lois Lane, Perry White, and all this for the very first time. But during his first few adventures, he encounters the Martian Manhunter and Lobo.
Why are you here?
Why are you here, Kryptonian?
Aside from the fact that he's not alone in this particular origin story, it's also different in how it impacts him as a character because he doesn't have to deal with being an alien on planet Earth by himself. Because again, Lobo and Martian Manhunter are major characters in this origin story version of his. So Kal-El is from Krypton, John Jones is from Mars, and Lobo is from Zarnia. So this version of Superman adjusts a bit better to being an alien on planet Earth because he has other aliens around him almost at the start to relate to. And this was actually interesting also to me is that if you're putting this many superpowered people immediately in Superman's first adventure in this version, how are you going to make for interesting conflict? Essentially what they do is just give him an overpowered villain to fight. Here, the overpowered villain is Parasite. Parasite in this version is, from my basic knowledge of the character, is pretty much the strongest version of this character. Whenever he absorbs powers, it is extremely fatal. Not like in his past iterations where he just puts them into a coma or he has to like absorb them for a very long time before causing death. So he's extremely overpowered in this version, and Superman will need all the help he can get to try and take him down, which makes for a very interesting version of the Superman origin story. This movie is, I think it's technically unrated, but if it did have a rating, for sure, I think it would be either a really rough PG-13 or just straight up R, because it is very violent.
It's ass whooping time!
This movie is very violent, and it has a lot of mature language and themes all over the movie, and they really don't hold back on Lobo as well. They straight up make him a Deadpool sort of character that says a lot of lewd and terrible things all the time, doesn't hold back on the violence and all of that. And again, Parasite, the way he just kills people in this movie is extremely violent. So yeah, this movie is definitely not for the kids. But I'm glad to say that all of this R-rated stuff in this movie serves actually the wider story. It's not there just to be violent for violence sake. Swear words aren't thrown around just so they can show that this movie's for the big boys, you know? Again, I mentioned that the action and violence in this movie is extremely good. And that is helped by a really good art style and animation style that I really very much love. I really like the art style, the animation style of this movie. The animation is consistently good throughout, and it makes for just a very awesome movie from start to finish. And because of this, I really, really hope that this is the start of a new DC animated universe. Because as we know, the last DC animated universe ended with Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. The director has spoken out that he hopes that DC will continue to do more animated films in this style and in this universe that he started. But as far as I know, there are no plans for that. But it's still up in the air. It's not a straight no from DC/Warner Brothers that this isn't gonna continue on, that this is just completely standalone. But there's no word as well as to whether they are interested in that or not. But I hope they are. They don't need to make as many movies as the last DC animated universe, which had, I don't know, like 24 or so films to its name. Just make a few more at least, because again, I really like the art style and the animation style and the way they modernize all of the characters in this one.
My name is Kal-El of Krypton, and I come in peace.
And because of that, I give it an 8 out of 10. Highly recommended for you folks that are fans of the DC animated movies. It's really good in my opinion. You should check it out. But if you have already checked it out, what did you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below and we can discuss it further. And this has been Asian Action Actor. If you liked my review of Superman, Man of Tomorrow, please click like down below and subscribe to see more of my awesome content. And while you're here, you might want to see the other movie reviews that I have already done on my channel.